Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be an awesome episode, especially if you're in business and you want to learn how to build real relationships online and offline. My brother Bob is going to be dropping some serious knowledge. He's one of my favorite authors of all time. I've read over 6,000 books, and his book is in my top five. Top five. That's how good, because I'm a big relationship builder, and this book really, really hit home for me. He's a speaker, coach, author. He's a Swiss Army knife of positivity. Bob, my brother, welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you. What a wonderful introduction, and really what a compliment to know that you enjoyed John David Mann's and my book as you did after having read so many books. I think you've even got me beat, and I read a lot of books.
Yeah, and I can see why you guys sold over 1 million copies. I can see why it's touched and helped so many people. So my first question is, before we even start, is what is your definition of resiliency?
Well, for such a powerful concept and such an important concept, my definition is actually very, very basic, and that is just the ability to get back up after you've been knocked down. I mean, that's resiliency, and to get up, even stronger. And sometimes you get up and you're not quite as strong for a while, but you build back on that. But the resilient person is that person who, they get knocked down and they're not staying down.
I love it. So can you give us a quick down and dirty about where you come from, where did you grow up, and how did you become such a force?
Well, I mean, yeah, I was very fortunate to be born to two great parents who set a fantastic example of just being a good human being, and so that I was very fortunate in that way. On the unfortunate side, I've lived my entire life with obsessive compulsive disorder, otherwise known as OCD, which has been, and I don't mean the OCD where people say, "Oh, I'm so OCD about." No, this is the actual uh, disorder, OCD, and so that's been tough. So that has been, a matter of having to be very resilient, because when you live with OCD, life is a continual knockdown on your rear end that you got to just decide whether you're going to stay there or get back up. So, I didn't even know I had it till I was 26 years old and it was diagnosed, because I'm at that age where back in the day they didn't know those things, right? I'm 67, so back then nobody knew what it was. I was 26, I think, when it got diagnosed. But so yeah, so I mean that's really my thing. I job wise, I began in broadcasting, got into sales, learned sales, did well in it, and started teaching it to others. And that's really how the speaking part started. And as that went on, I've continued to learn and grow and so forth. It's it's developed that way.
So growing up, did you, and you didn't know, of course, that you had OCD, but what were some of the traits that you had that a lot of people that are listening to this might not even realize that they have some of these
Yeah,
traits?
it's still, or someone they love, absolutely. And now, fortunately, there is help for it. There are organizations that help. And so obsessive compulsive disorder is a chemical imbalance in the brain, and it manifests itself through uncontrollable, very disturbing, distressing thoughts. So if you take your worst thought, which everybody has at times, and then multiply it, by 100, and then have it going on 24 hours a day, including while you're in your nightmares, that's pretty much it. And then what happens is, a lot of times, in order to somehow magically rid ourselves of these horrible thoughts, if I do this, then the thought won't be there. You do these repetitive actions, but it never works. Of course, it only plays into it. It's just a continual cycle that gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Um, and so, if you spot behavior in someone where you just can't understand why they seem to be doing certain repetitive things or unnecessary things that they don't seem to be able to control, that might be a sign that they might be starting. And it might not be, by the way, because it's not necessarily that it's OCD. But there is the OC Foundation, which is the International Obsessive Compulsive Disorder Foundation, and they can help determine whether somebody really has it or not. It's iocdf.org, and I'm gonna actually put that into the chat. No, it's not gonna let me, but but if someone's listening and wants to put this in, it's iocdf.org, and you can go there and look around.
So at age 26, what made you think about getting tested for it?
Oh, I didn't know I was even being tested for that. I had been, seeing psychiatrists and psychologists since I'd, been in my late teens, trying to figure out what this thing was that, had been torturing me most of my life. And I went to McLean Hospital in outside of Boston, which was known for mental disorders and so forth, and it just happened to be they were starting to study it. But I remember seeing one psychiatrist back when I was probably 19 or 20 years old, who listened to me telling him about what was going on in my mind, and he said to me, "You're nuts." Imagine a psychiatrist saying to their patient, "You're nuts." It sounds like a Rodney Dangerfield joke, something he would say, right? But no,
Yeah.
I believed him because I thought I was. So, but that's so. And I bring this up only because we're talking about resilience. I usually don't bring this up on interviews, but when you go through this, you have to be resilient, because and I've said to people. And people have asked, well, do you think one reason you're so successful is because you've got OCD, that was a driving force? No, absolutely not. Someone might say someone can be obsessive compulsive about certain things, but that's not the same as having obsessive compulsive disorder. It's two totally different things. One who just happens to be obsessed or compulsive about some certain specific things, that can help drive their success. They may be miserable while they're doing it, but it can help make them successful, or what have you. But no, with OCD, you don't succeed because of OCD. You succeed despite OCD.
So then, okay, then a lot of people would ask, then how did you become successful? How, and I think a lot of it, I think your answer, one of your answers is going to be is building relationships, because for me, if I have any questions about building relationships, I follow what you do. I listen to what you do. I listen to your talks. I read your books. So what made you successful? Because a lot of people, if they have a mental disorder, like I have PTSD and borderline personality disorder, instead of using it as an excuse, we persevere,
Right.
even though we have these things.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you become successful even after finding out you had OCD?
Well, I think I just said, what choice do I have? I'm going to have this anyway. I'm going to battle through this my whole life. I'm going to battle with this my whole life, and because it's not something that's curable. But one day I think it will be, and I hope it will be. But it isn't now. But so assuming I was going to have this kind of thing happening in my life, I could have it and be unsuccessful, or I could have it and be successful, and my commitment was to do the things that I needed to do in order to make the best possible life I could. And so it's certainly slowed me up. I know there's things I could have accomplished before I did, and there's more that I could have accomplished, but I've done what I've done with what I have to work with, and so forth. But as far as, when you were talking about relationships, that's been a huge part of any success that I've been, fortunate to have. Relationships have been everything. And you've heard me say, you've read in my books or heard me say, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And so I think developing those relationships is absolutely a key for, for most all of us in terms of being successful.
And for me, like I said, I'm a relationship guy. I believe in building generational relationships. Hopefully, from this moment on, hopefully we'll be friends for life. I believe in, like I said, I believe in building relationships. But I think in order to have a friend, you have to be a friend. And
That's
a lot of people just don't know how to be a friend. Are you do you hear a lot about that?
yeah, I mean, not everybody is equipped or with the information that's necessary. They didn't necessarily. I mean, again, I had a great example, in my parents. Um, but a lot of people, and a lot of other people do too, as well. But a lot of people don't. And we all live our lives according to a certain set of beliefs, our belief system. This is a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, popular culture, cultural mores, everything we see, hear, touch, taste, smell, every experience we've had in our life. But our basic beliefs have basically been put in place by the time we're little more than toddlers. And so we grow up, we live our lives subject to what I call an unconscious operating system, right? Think the Matrix without the machines, right? Instead of the machines, it's the beliefs that have been handed to us that we have unconsciously accepted. So most people believe that they're making choices based on conscious thought and free will, when really most of us are living our lives making choices only within that framework, within that matrix. And with some people, it's, well, the world is tough and people are not nice, and so I've got to not be nice to them, or they've got to make the first move if they want my friendship, or if they want me to trust them, they've got to first trust me, or all the different dichotomies out there, right, that make it so that it's difficult to be in a relationship with that kind of person. So I think it's a matter of people like you teaching it, and other people out there teaching it, and whether it's through books or seminars or mentorship, or just living their lives so that people can learn and embody that.
And like we were talking about before we came on the show, you know, I come from New Jersey where it's always hustle, it's always grind. One of my father's favorite sayings was, "You got to be a go getter." But I love that you talk about being a go giver, and and I believe you can't outgive God, but I'm going to try. I'm going to do my darndest to outgive God. So, talk about what it's like to be a go giver and not just a go getter.
Well, what you just said there was important, because you said not just a go-getter, because I agree with your dad. Being a go-getter is also important if we define a go-getter as someone who takes action, right? Because action has got to be part of the mix. And you're a business person, Richard, and everyone watching this, listening to this, is a most likely an entrepreneur, or is in business. And one thing we all know is you can have the best thoughts, the greatest ideas, the nicest of intent, but unless action is put into the mix, nothing's going to happen. So we want people to be go-getters. Now, we want to combine being a go-getter, a person of action, with a go-giver, a person who is absolutely, totally laser focused on bringing immense value to the lives of others, right? We would say the opposite of a go-giver is a go-taker. And that's that person who kind of feels entitled, if you will, to take without having added value to the person, to the process, to the situation. And so we would say, yeah, as your dad says, be a go-getter and be a go-giver. Just don't be a go-taker.
And like when I first got into sales, I've sold anything you could think of, I sold. And one of the first people that I ever got interested in was Zig Ziglar.
Ah,
And
great.
everything was give. And he said, you can have anything you want in this life if you help enough people get what they want. But I think you have to be a giver in order to
Sure.
become successful, especially in sales. So talk about being a giver in sales.
Sure. So, the first law in the Go Giver is the law of value, which says your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. Now, this sounds counterintuitive when first hearing it. Give more in value than I take in payment. That sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy, right? So we simply have to understand the difference between price and value. Price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to another person that they will, in this case, let's say, willingly exchange their money for it and be glad they did, while you make a very healthy profit. A quick example I like to use is the accountant who you hire to do your taxes. And she charges, let's say, $1,000. That's her fee, or literally her price, $1,000. But what value does she give to you that makes it so worthwhile for you to do business with her? Well, through her years of experience, her knowledge, her wisdom, her desire to get to know you and your business and what you are looking to accomplish, she's able to save you $5,000 on your taxes. She saves you hours and hours, countless hours of time, and she provides you and your family with the security and the peace of mind of knowing it was done correctly. So she gave you well over $5,000 in value in exchange for a $1,000 fee or price. She gave you more in value than she took in payment. So you feel great about it. But she also made a very healthy profit because it was worth it, obviously, to her to exchange her time and her knowledge and her wisdom and her energy for that $1,000 fee. In fact, in any free market-based exchange, and when I say free market, I simply mean no one's forced to do business with anyone else. In any market-based exchange, there should always be two profits: the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each of them come away better off afterwards than they were beforehand. But here's the key, Richard. This transaction, if you will, did not take place because she was focused on her fee. She was focused on the immense value she was providing you. The fee was simply the reward. This is why John David Mann and I say that money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning, which means, nothing more than understanding that the value you provide another person, that value must be your focus. That's got to come first. The money you receive is a natural result of the value you've provided.
I love that, and I totally agree. That's why I love your book so much. But
Thank you.
I tell everybody, we can always make more money, but we can't make more time. And time is such a finite thing. Like, I'm grateful that you're spending 30 minutes with me of your time, because you can't get that time back. And I think that's a lot of people, they don't realize how important even just giving somebody your time is way more valuable than dollars.
I agree with you, and I'm grateful for your time as well. So it's a win-win. I hope the viewers are enjoying it and they're finding this conversation to be of value. Then it will be a win-win-win.
Yep. So now a lot of people, when they go into sales, they're always thinking about, I win and I'm just getting the other person's money. And I love the way you talk about having a win-win situation. Like, for me, if you give me, say, $10, I want to give you 10 times the value of that $10. And that's the way I live my life. I think everything should be a win-win situation, because this way neither person walks away from the table feeling dirty.
Well, yeah, and that's also why free market capitalism is the most benevolent system that there is. Because remember, nobody in a free market, okay, where government's a legitimate function is to protect people, the individual, from force or fraud. But otherwise, people are free to exchange, buy, sell from each other, however they feel is in their best interest. So, in a free market, you can't force anyone to do business with you, which is great. It means it's incumbent upon that seller, upon the company, to be the one to prove their value to the buyer, to the consumer. So the consumer must come out ahead, must win in order for them to want to buy. Meanwhile, of course, when the seller sells, they're selling at less of a price than what, or less cost. The cost of goods sold and so forth is less than what they charge. So yes, everybody advances, and what happens is it creates that rising tide for all ships.
Yeah.
So yeah, the focus always must be on pleasing the customer. Otherwise, they're not going to buy from you. And if they do buy from you and they're not happy, they're certainly not going to tell other people to buy from you. In fact, they'll probably do the opposite.
And I think it's amazing that the world we live in, like I personally, there's certain brands that people absolutely love, and they love the mission behind it, like Subaru. Usually, if a person buys one Subaru, that's it for life. They're Subaru drivers for life.
Mhm.
Or Bomba socks. Any of these companies that have missions, it seems like even in down terms economics, they still seem to thrive and survive. And I think it's all because of the giving value and giving back. Do you see that a lot of companies with mission statements are doing a lot better than some companies that are just in it for the dollar?
Well, yeah. First of all, I think it's been well documented, and people like Simon Sinek, in his that original TED talk he did, and in his book, uh, not it wasn't the power of why, it was I can't remember it, and I have the book and it's right behind me, and but he talked about people buying from a company a lot of times because they identify with that company's mission. A great friend of mine, uh, her name is Lisa McLeod. She is a corporate speaker, and she writes a lot about purpose, and um, and what she has discovered is that companies and and by the way, it's not just the company leadership. This is where it goes really through the entire company. Okay, she calls it noble purpose. So one of her books is Selling with Noble Purpose, another one is Leading with Noble Purpose. But those companies who have what they call a noble purpose actually tend to have a much more profitable company, a much bigger bottom line. And it doesn't have to be necessarily curing cancer as the noble purpose. It could be, there are companies that make nails that she discovered, who understand that their purpose of making those nails is to hold machinery together, that if it didn't, could hurt, could cause injury or something. But because they have noble purpose in what they're doing, they know that each one of those screws or nuts or bolts or whatever, or nails, is so very important, right? And it comes out in what they do. So I think you're absolutely right, and I think the marketplace can sense that. They can sense where there's when there's something bigger than simply the bottom line. And of course, the irony is that typically creates a much bigger bottom line.
So now, this is the teaching podcast. So this is something I ask all my amazing guests like yourself. Um, if a veteran gets out of the military, he wants to start a business today in today's marketplace, what would be your top three pieces of advice for him not only to be a go getter, but to be a go giver?
I think first of all, as a veteran, I thank them very much. They're truly the heroes for what they have done and what they've given to their country. Um, and I think it's the same as anyone else who starts a business. You know, you find something that you believe in, you find something that you believe is going to be of value to the marketplace, and you find something that is going to, have a good return financially as well. I mean, I don't think it goes any, I don't think it's any different in this case for a veteran as it would be for anyone else who wants to start a business. And of course,
So go ahead.
well, I was going to say that, the big thing too is in starting any business is learning the system, learning how to do so. Anyone who has been in, or if there's a business, someone has been very successful at it and somebody has documented how they became successful at it, right? And so what we want to do is find out who those people are and where we can get that information. It might be in a book, it might be through one-on-one teaching with them, or it might be through some other way. It's different depending upon the business, but it's very important to discover the system and follow a system for doing so. I define a system as simply the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles, the key being predictability. If it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired result of B, then you know that all you need to do is A and continue to do A, and you'll get the desired result of B. Of course, Michael Gerber talks about this a lot in the E-Myth, right? And so that's a good book to start with for someone who's going to go into an entrepreneurial venture.
So now I love your LinkedIn page. It's probably one of my favorite pages of all my LinkedIn.
Thank you.
I follow everything you do on LinkedIn. So
Wow.
what's coming up in Bob's world? What's new? What's on the horizon?
Well, we're continuing with a couple of friends of mine and colleagues, Jeff West and Kim Angeli. We put on every 3 months, we hold an online event called SalesWise Live. And in this, we basically just, help people move their business from where it is now to where they want it to be. And it covers everything from the prospecting process to how to have sales conversations that result in the results you want, how to follow through in such a way as to position yourself as that desired resource, how to keep yourself not just top of mind, but top of heart. So you're always positioned for endless referrals. So we're doing that quite a bit, and we're really just loving that. We have such wonderful people that join, great just entrepreneurs who are looking to grow. And I also have something called the Go Giver Academy, in which part of that is what we call the Go Giver Success Vault, and it's where I've put all my online courses on there, and people are able to access it, as much as they want, 24 hours a day.
So then how do we find you, and where can we find these resources?
Well, Burg.com, Burg.com will pretty much take you to everything. SalesWise Live has a different URL, which is saleswiselive.com. So it's not SalesWise, but saleswiselive.com. But if you go to Burg.com, Burg.com, you'll find most everything there.
And I'm gonna put all this in the liner notes so everybody can find
Thank you.
Find everything. My brother, I just want to say I'm so grateful that you took the time out to hang out with us today. And I'm truly humbled that I actually got to learn a few things today that I didn't know.
Oh, thank you. It's my absolute pleasure and honor. Thank you, Richard. You're certainly a hero, and you're someone we can all emulate and be better off for it.
So guys, make sure you go to Burg.com, check everything out. Check out his Instagram, his LinkedIn page. His LinkedIn page is awesome. And I just want to say thank you once again, Bob, and I appreciate you. And guys, as you know, every day before I log off, my favorite quote is, every day we wake up, we get a choice. We can either be a victim or we can be a victor.
Mm.
And if you guys watch this show every week and show up, you guys are no longer victims of your past. but you're victors of your future. I love you guys and I appreciate you guys. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. I love you guys. Bob, my friend, have an awesome, awesome week and enjoy that beautiful Florida weather.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Be good.